Greetings, everyone here today. Joining the Innovation Speaker Series, the Atlantic Canada Climate Network is proud to co-present this event with the Canadian Environmental Network. We have come together for this project to showcase cutting-edge emergent technologies and their potential to advance climate solutions and create new opportunities. Before I begin, I want to first respectfully recognize and acknowledge the relationship with the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across Canada that have with the land and all Canadians that live on and enjoy. We would like to recognize specifically that the Atlantic Canada Climate Network operates on the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqiyik, Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, and Abenaki nations, or the Wabanaki Confederacy, as well as Innu and Inuit people. This territory is covered by treaties of peace and friendship, which these nations first signed with the British Crown in 1726. These treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact established the rule for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. So it is in this spirit of peace and friendship that I greet you all today. It also reminds us that each of the 634 different First Nation communities, 53 Inuit communities, and 8 Métis settlements have a unique historical, cultural, spiritual, and environmentally sustainable connection to the land that their people and ancestors have inhabited since time immemorial. We encourage all Canadians and visitors to learn about these lands and regularly acknowledge the historic context and current relationship that exists between unceded land on which we live and work, and of course, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also encourage all Canadians to consider how they can personally contribute to Canada's reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Now, the Innovation Speaker Series aims to foster collaboration and knowledge exchange amongst diverse stakeholders passionate about addressing climate action and climate change. Today, we have the privilege of immersing ourselves with the remarkable journey of Angela Nagy. So she's the visionary behind Greenstep Solutions. That's a trailblazing enterprise shaping the landscape of sustainability. In 2008, Angela embarked on this transformative mission of founding Greenstep Solutions. This platform has become a beacon for small and medium-sized enterprises seeking to elevate their sustainability performance and reduce carbon footprints. This platform is not just a consultancy, but a catalyst for change, empowering small and medium-sized enterprises to, again, elevate that sustainability performance and reduce those carbon footprints. So today we have the privilege of delving into Angela's extraordinary journey, gaining insights from her wealth of experience and leadership in the sustainability landscape. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Angela as she shares her insights, expertise, and a vision for a sustainable future. Angela?
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for that warm welcome. And I loved your way beyond the land acknowledgement. And I will take that as an inspiration to improve our land acknowledgement. And on that note, I just want to acknowledge that I am very grateful to be presenting to you today from the ancestral and unceded territory of the Silks Okanagan people, where I call home in beautiful Kelowna, British Columbia, and where Greenstep is headquartered. And really excited to share with you today some of the work that we're doing to help transform the world through sustainability and regeneration. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Please give me the old thumbs up if that's working. Okay, fabulous. Well, I wanted to give a little bit of a brief history as to who Greenstep is, and then some of the thinking that has really shaped how we are innovating within the SME sector across Canada, and just starting now to do work around the world. But before I do that, just sharing why I started Greenstep. And a bit of a long story, but long story short, when I was 18, I decided my purpose was to save the world through business, politics, and music. Very grateful that I was able to discover my purpose at such a young age. And I just knew that I would start a company one day to make an impact. I didn't know what it would be. But eventually that transpired after going out and becoming a consultant, after working in the environmental sector in various capacities for about 10 years. I went out on my own as a consultant and then started Greenstep in 2008. And really our core purpose is to help businesses and organizations to measure and improve their sustainability performance. And since that time, we've worked with thousands of businesses in British Columbia, across Canada, and internationally, in a very broad range of industries and sectors with a broad suite of tools and programs, some of them designed specifically for the tourism and hospitality sector, and others that are non-industry specific. And I noticed that one of our clients, Eve Lehman from the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association, is here today. So hi, Eve, one of our favorite tourism clients, and really a real trailblazer as well in their own right. We provide a number of different services: strategy, research, carbon measurement, life cycle analysis, energy, water, and waste assessments and conservation programs, training programs, and certifications. And we really try to practice what we preach. So we've been measuring our own carbon footprint internally since 2011, and have been carbon neutral since that time. We recently, this year, chose to become climate neutral certified. So while we certainly focus on reduction first, and we encourage our clients to focus on reducing their absolute carbon footprint first, that's essential. We have also chosen climate neutral because of their rigorous approach to ensuring high quality carbon offsets for companies that are choosing to offset their emissions. We've also been a certified B Corporation since 2015. And most recently, I was in Uzbekistan, in the city of Samarkand, the historic city, this year, where Greenstep's candidature as an affiliate member of the United Nations World Tourism Organization was officially approved. And that it was a big milestone for me personally and for Greenstep. One of my big goals is to serve the United Nations in some capacity at some point in time. So I'm very excited to have made that important step. So we really do try to lead by example in all of the work that we do. We've also just recently measured and celebrated our 15 years of impact. I'm going to get into how we've created this impact and some of the innovations that we're creating in this what's becoming a very busy space around helping other businesses and organizations improve their sustainability and ESG performance. But in total, we've reached over 15,000 businesses. We've worked directly with over 6,000 businesses. We've saved over 11 million kilowatt hours of electricity in British Columbia. And I make that point because that's with some of our utility clients. In other parts of Canada, that would have led to a larger carbon footprint reduction, but we're mostly hydroelectric in BC. So still very important as we try to reduce peak demand for electricity in BC. But we've also helped to save 8,600 gigajoules of natural gas, and that has resulted in a cumulative impact of over 3,000 tons of CO2e reduced. One of the things we do to measure whether we're successful, most businesses will have financial targets, which of course we have, but we also have an impact target. And understanding this information was really important for us this year, because I want to make sure that as we're creating carbon emissions to run our company, to visit clients, to attend events, to speak at events, that the impact that we're creating on the other side of that is far greater than the impact that we're responsible for. So the positive impacts that we're creating outweigh the negative impacts that we're creating. So based on the data, looking at our last 15 years of carbon, our impact was 18 times greater than our positive impacts were 18 times greater compared to our own carbon footprint. And our goal for 2030 is to make that 100x. So we'd like to create 100 times more impact than positive impact than we're. So before I dive into how we've been innovating in this space, I wanted to back up a little bit and just frame the work that we do and some of the ideas and concepts that really inform the processes and the approaches that we take. One of the very first books I ever read, many, many years ago, well over 20 years ago, as I knew I needed to arm myself with knowledge to help transform the world, was the book Natural Capitalism by Paul Hawken and Amory and Hunter Levins. And in this book, in this book and other subsequent books, some of the ideas around needing to reduce our negative impacts through finding efficiencies and creating operational improvements comes to light, as well as the need to leave positive impacts. And this is framed as leaving a positive handprint on the world. So we think about the negative footprint we can create, and we can think about the positive impacts as our handprint, and redesigning how we make and deliver goods and services in order to be circular and restorative, striving to be doing more good versus just doing and being less bad, which is also, I think, a more compelling story and a compelling reason to get involved in making change. So as we strive to be more good while also being less bad, we create those positive impacts, we create that handprint, and we ultimately achieve a net positive through regeneration. And I've got this visual for this, and as we regenerate, as we heal the things we've broken, as we fix the things we've degraded, we are ultimately able to work towards sustainability. And there's a lot of different language out there in the world right now around, you know, what's sustainable, what's net positive, what's ESG, what's regenerative. At the end of the day, when we look at the definitions of sustainability, where, you know, ultimately all systems and beings can thrive, the planet, of course, being one of those systems, can thrive in balance with each other, that's sustainability. You know, just eliminating our carbon footprint isn't sustainable. We have a lot of work to do to heal the things we've broken, to regenerate the earth, to regenerate and heal relationships with each other. So the visual of that I think helps really for me put it together, and the idea that net zero becomes not a culminating point, like, yes, we've achieved net zero, but instead it becomes a crossing point. It's a crossing point on the way up to sustainability and to net positive. So if we look at today and the footprint that we have as organizations, as businesses, as individuals, and we need to work towards doing less bad, finding efficiencies, that's where we're reducing our carbon footprint as we do that. But it's not a downward graph where we're hitting net zero. We're on this upward trajectory where we're doing less bad on our way to sustainability. And as we find those efficiencies and we do less bad, we find opportunities to do more good. We find opportunities to be circular, to regenerate, to heal, redesign products and services, to do those things, to have those outcomes for us. And as our handprint gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we're ultimately able to restore what's damaged and achieve net positive and achieve sustainability. So I really like thinking of it in this way, as we've got a long ways to go. This is, 2050 to 2100 and beyond, for most businesses and organizations, and really the way the world is set up today. And as I've talked to thousands of businesses across Canada and beyond, really, I've identified 3 key barriers to moving in that direction, moving in that upward trajectory. And it doesn't really matter who I talk to and at what stage they're at on their journey, which has been fascinating as we've honed in on these 3 barriers. Time, budget, and knowledge again and again come up. We want to do the right things, and this is especially true for SMEs and startups and even individuals. We want to do the right thing, but we're just so busy, keeping our business afloat, or keeping our organization operating, or running my household. I can speak, as a mom with a busy household. We're busy, so time is a barrier, and there's this perception that this is, it is a long journey, but you can take baby steps to make progress on that journey. The most important step is the first step, but time is really a real barrier. Budget. There's a perception that this is just going to be another huge line item on the budget and we can't afford it, and not necessarily an understanding that there's a tremendous return on investment from making strides towards operating more sustainably. And then the knowledge gap as well. You know what? I want to do the right thing, but I don't really know where to start. So in the development and the design of our programs and services, we've really tried to tackle those three key barriers. And it's important because consumer and labor demands are changing. When we think about this in the business and organizational context, businesses are facing tremendous challenges when it comes to labor and when it comes to customer demands as well. There is an expectation that businesses are doing good now, and that this is just part of the fabric of their organizations. And watching the research and the numbers of consumers, the numbers of travelers, and even the numbers of corporate buyers now is becoming a significant amount of pressure. And financial institutions, they want to know what businesses and organizations are doing to tackle sustainability to improve their ESG performance. Energy and resource costs are going up. The carbon tax, of course, is having an impact on that. That is the intention. It is the stick approach. The carrot approach is all of the incentives that come along with that, and the incentive to help us not only reduce our carbon footprint, but ultimately over time reduce our costs. So by getting ahead of those rising costs, they're also going up because of inflation. They're going up because a lot of the energy infrastructure in Canada is old and needs to be replaced, and a ton of money needs to get spent on that. And those costs get passed along to us as consumers. So, and as businesses. So energy and resource costs are going up. So it's really important to get ahead of those when it comes to fuel and energy. And there are significant cost savings and return on investment from getting ahead of those costs. And oh, by the way, there's also a climate crisis. So the fourth and probably most foundational reason is getting ahead of getting ahead of the climate crisis might be a bit of a challenge at this time, but doing something really meaningful about it. And just to touch on the business case, which I think is really compelling. This is from a Canadian author, Bob Willard. He wrote several books, has written several books over the last couple of decades. The New Sustainability Advantage is one of the books that I refer to most frequently. And in that book, he identifies the business case. So I'm just going to really quickly break this down. As an organization that is looking to tackle sustainability, how to make the case to senior management or whomever is holding the purse strings. You could also apply this in your home or really any context. So maybe not increased revenue in your home, but in a business for sure. You've got increased revenue as sort of this is like a profit and loss statement or an income statement, if you will. So you have your revenue on the top and your costs on the bottom, and revenue minus cost equals, hopefully there's a profit at the end of the day if you're a for-profit organization. So on the top line, he identifies that by adding new products or services that are related to sustainability, that are marketed or you're marketing differently because you're able to measurably improve your sustainability performance, you can drive more customers, you can drive more business into your organization, and that thereby increases revenue. And he estimates that on average, there's about a 9% opportunity to increase revenue. On the other side of that income statement is the expenses. And this is where it gets super exciting. And energy is the biggest opportunity. Most businesses and organizations could reduce their energy consumption by 75% or even greater with renewable energy, if that was an option. But up to 75% reduction in costs related to energy, 20% reduction in costs related to waste, and 10% reduction in costs coming into the business related to the ability to reduce material inputs coming into the business. That is a tremendous opportunity. We call that eco-efficiency. We've got a program called the Eco-Efficiency Program, where we help businesses to identify the opportunities to reduce their energy, water, waste, and material inputs. And then on the other side of that, a little bit more difficult to measure and quantify, but definitely important, is tapping into that increased demand by employees who want to work for values aligned companies. So there's an opportunity to increase employee productivity and innovation within companies, where those employees feel really engaged and aligned with the sustainability mission or values of that organization. And therefore, those employees are more loyal and want to stay longer within those organizations. So that can reduce turnover costs by about 25%. At the end of the day, there's the potential to increase profits by 50 to 80%. This would be over time, let's say 3 to 7 years of diligently implementing a sustainability strategy. The risk of that is those costs are going up. You're not going to get ahead of them. Employees are going to become disengaged and might leave to go work for someone who cares. So there's the risk of profits reducing by 16 to 36%. So for more information on that, Bob Willard has a great website called The Sustainability Advantage, and his books and stuff are listed on there. So would highly encourage both that book and then Paul Hawkins' work as well, which includes Drawdown, my new the new Bible of climate change in my opinion. Another amazing book that I would highly recommend to anybody who's interested in finding solutions. So what if, instead of thinking about the barriers to achieving sustainability, we were able to reframe sustainability and climate action as an enabler to meet the growing consumer and corporate demand for responsible business? So this is a pathway to allowing us to do these things. It helps us to avoid greenwashing and also green hushing, which is essentially the act of hiding what you're doing that's green because you're afraid of going out and saying something in case people poke holes in it. You don't want to be accused of greenwashing, so you say nothing. The antidote to that is being able to be credible and having measurable impacts that you can communicate to your stakeholders. It can help to drive cost savings and operational efficiencies, which lead to improved profitability, attracting and retaining informed and engaged team members at all levels, and building trust and support within our communities and with other stakeholders. And ultimately, we can help to make the world a better place by reducing those negative impacts on people and the planet and improving the positive impacts, which we like to call improving your sustainability performance. Now I'm going to share with you how we have innovated within the work that we're doing, the tools and programs that we've created to address some of those challenges and opportunities that I just shared. So in all of the work that we do, we follow this framework, which evolved out of the work that we have done in the past, following the natural step framework, and many other things that we've learned and tested and tried over the past 15 years. So the first step is really educating and engaging. So creating some common understanding around things like climate change, around sustainability terminology, getting teams on the same page in some capacity. So we do a lot of work on education and engagement, and I'll dive into that a little bit more. The next step is measuring baseline performance. So in order to tackle these big challenges, in order to communicate credibly on the work that organizations are doing, you really need to know where you're starting. And once you know where you're starting, measuring your carbon footprint can be one way of knowing where you're starting, or working through some of the assessment tools that we've created, and I'll share, is another way of knowing where you're starting. But knowing where you're starting helps you to set realistic goals and targets, and then create an action plan to get from here, where you're at today, to there, where you want to get. So if you're setting, let's say, some net zero targets, and you're looking to reduce your carbon footprint by 50% by 2030, based on science-aligned targets, or by 90% by 2050, that's going to take some planning. It's going to take some KPIs. It's going to take a thoughtful approach, and it doesn't need to be all done at once. We can take a step-by-step approach in doing this, and ultimately the goal there is being able to set those targets and measure performance along the journey. Once those goals, targets, and action plan are established, then an organization can move on to integrating that within their organization, implementing those action plans, and monitoring and measuring their impacts and results. And then ideally reporting on the progress. And that's where the ability to avoid green hushing and greenwashing comes into play, because you've got the data to back up your claims. You can say, hey, you know what, we started here, we've got lots of work to do, but look, we have a plan. And then year over year, look how we're progressing on your plan. We know we're still not perfect, but we're making progress. And that can be done internally, encouraging and engaging team members, and it can be done externally, sharing those successes with external stakeholders, customers, communities, etc. And then ultimately achieving the goals that the organization has set to achieve, celebrating internally, winning awards, or pursuing certifications if that's important for the organization. And then we repeat the cycle. So each year, it's a cycle of continuous improvement. So always looking for ways to engage and educate, measure baseline. Maybe you start with carbon, maybe you start with an employee survey, maybe you start with something else, but you just continue adding new ways of measuring and tracking over time. And if you just want to start with one, carbon measurement is a really great way of honing in on a lot of probably every environmental impact that you would create as an organization. Depending on how far you go on your carbon footprint measurement, can really be quantified through a carbon footprint measurement. So that is a really good place to start. In following that framework that we've developed, we really work to meet businesses where they're at. So while we definitely consult to much larger organizations and provide services to much larger organizations, we really designed our programs and services for small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs. SMEs in Canada are 98% of all businesses. And if we don't help the SMEs, we are not going to make progress on climate journey, or on tackling the climate crisis. And for us as a company, achieving our goals of saving the world means we actually need to be measurably moving the needle. And SMEs, for a long time, have been left out of that. Lots of companies, big consulting companies that provide services to larger organizations, but not a lot. That's changing now. Definitely a lot more organizations that have emerged in the last 5 years or so that are really taking a lead on supporting SMEs. So in the design and development of our products and programs and services, we really want to address those key barriers of time, budget, and knowledge. So we've created entry-level programs and resources that don't require a lot of time or money. Many SMEs can't afford to hire a consultant for thousands of dollars, but they can probably afford hundreds of dollars, or maybe a little bit more, depending on where they're at, to really get some support on that journey. We want to develop a pathway for continuous improvement that isn't just like, okay, we've helped you do this thing and now good luck. We kind of did that at the beginning. We'd help an organization develop a sustainability strategy, and then we'd say good luck and walk away. And I think in most cases it sat on a shelf and nothing happened. So we learned from that, and now we offer that continuous support and engagement. And then for those larger organizations, we offer customized services that really support their unique needs. And the other important thing to note is that we've designed delivery models to, of course, be able to help businesses and organizations one-on-one, but also to enable local governments, accelerators, industry associations, and other organizations to offer those solutions to their stakeholders, to the businesses and organizations that they're supporting as they try to help their community, their stakeholders, their members move the needle on these important issues, and even wrap their brains around these important issues, which are coming at us very, very quickly, and then track outcomes over time. So I'll walk you through some of the ways in which we're doing that. So that first sort of stage, that education, but also the baseline measurement, in addition to offering a lot of training programs for organizations, we also offer low and no cost assessments and certifications. So that starts with our energy assessments. Right now, we're able to offer both virtual and on-site energy assessments. We do that under contract in BC with our two major utilities, BC Hydro and Fortis BC. We're also doing that with the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association through the eco-efficiency program. And we can do that one-on-one for organizations as well. Organizations that want to look at what are some of the opportunities for energy efficiency, what are the rebates that are available through governments and organizations that can help to cover those costs, and what might I save, what might I expect to save. We help those businesses to get quotes on some of the opportunities that are identified. There's no obligation to implement a project, but it really arms them with the information about what it's going to cost, what they could save, and the impact that can create. We also have designed and developed, as I mentioned, some programs specifically for the tourism and hospitality sector. And I'm going to share some screenshots with you in a little bit, but we've got an online assessment tool that's available for free for any business in the tourism and hospitality space or not-for-profit organization to measure their own organizational performance on a set of 87 questions that are aligned with the Global Sustainable Tourism Council and have been formally recognized by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council as meeting their criteria. And we have a similar assessments for tourism destinations. And we actually just certified, and I wish I had come armed with this information, a destination in Atlantic Canada through this program, and have worked with a few businesses in Atlantic Canada as well. So those programs are, again, that assessment is available for free, but we also offer a certification program that businesses can participate in. And we've worked through both industry associations and destination marketing organizations who have funded their businesses to go through this process and to achieve certification. We're also launching a new green business assessment and certification program that is very much focused on climate action. So all of the questions and criteria have been aligned with Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3, which, if you haven't measured your carbon footprint, may be gibberish, but it's really foundational to measuring the carbon footprint of businesses and organizations. So we're exploring piloting that new program with some communities and organizations in Canada. And we will also be making that criteria available for free on our website. We think that's really important because businesses should be able to see where they're at in a quick and easy and transparent way. And then we offer a number of free tools to support them until, or maybe they're never ready to get that one-on-one support, but that's available for them. We also have designed a single-use plastic-free certification program that helps businesses to assess their use of single-use plastics. There is a ban coming in Canada. It's already been announced on single-use plastics. They'll be phased out over the next few years. So if you're not aware of that, it would be great to look into it. But really, any single-use plastic item is covered in this program. We're really trying to help businesses get rid of single-use items altogether whenever possible. And finally, carbon conscious, which helps businesses to measure their carbon footprint and create a science-aligned climate action plan and focus on continuous improvement. We've also designed some training and cohort model guided programs. So really thinking about Sustainability 101, helping to provide just some basic education on terms, concepts, the business case studies. And we've also created programs that both of these programs were delivered across Canada through the Tourism Industry Association of Canada this year that helped businesses to set those goals, create targets and an action plan for improvement, as well as measure their carbon footprint. And we utilized our eco-based carbon software, which is an online tool that's very affordable for businesses to use. My goal next year is to launch a free version of that tool for businesses to get engaged and use that tool as well. And then finally, the program I'm most excited about sharing is our EcoFund program. This is really came out of a desire to help businesses and organizations generate the funds they needed to make large investments in carbon reduction projects. It's easy to get started, I would say relatively easy to get started on some of those smaller investments, but we wanted to create a fund, a mechanism for businesses to make those decisions more quickly. Lots of times I would hear, well, my lights are working. Why would I go out and buy new light bulbs? Or my hot water tank is working just fine. It has another few years left in it. Why would I go out and buy a high efficiency model? And the problem is that when that hot water tank fails, you're going to get the model that's available right now, that's probably the cheapest, instead of really thinking about how do I make sure I get the most high efficiency version of this available so I can save money in the long run in operating this hot water tank, just as an example. So we designed the program as a funding and carbon management program. We've mostly used it in the tourism and hospitality sector, but really it's something that any business can participate in. We help those businesses to tackle those large energy efficiency, renewable energy, and carbon reduction projects, drive down their costs, improve their profits and grow their bottom line, increase their business valuation, and reduce their carbon footprint. And I'll show you a graph of how we help to communicate this. So this is an example from a hotel. So we had shared this data with the hotel. It's actually a hotel chain. And we said, here's what you're currently spending on energy across all of your properties on an annual basis. And here's what's going to happen. So if we look at 2021, that was how much they were spending in 2021 across all of their properties to pay for their energy consumption. And we applied a rate of inflation that the utilities are using, and we also applied the carbon tax. And this is something that I would encourage every business that uses energy, probably all of you, anyone that's within a business, to do. And even in your own home, it could be an interesting exercise to look at what is going to happen if I don't do anything to improve energy efficiency within my home or business or organization. What's going to happen to my energy costs? Well, in this case, there was a significant increase. It was almost $1 million a year increase in the cost of energy across these hotels. Then we said, what if through the EcoFund program, we could help you save just 5% of energy per year? Now, of course, that 5%, once we've made those energy reductions, they last, they compound year over year. So the next year they do another 5%. Now they've got 10% energy reduction. The next year, another 5%. Now they're at 15%, and so on and so forth. And we were able to show that not only could they get ahead of those rising costs, within a decade of consistently applying those kinds of energy conservation measures, they would be able to be spending less money on energy than they were when they started, which is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity. So over $1 million in avoided costs. And I think if we all could really think about the cost benefits of driving down our carbon footprints in this way when it comes to everything that we do, vehicles, heating and cooling buildings, etc., we would be well on our way to tackling the climate crisis. So the program really helps the company integrate an eco fee. We take that money every month to help ensure credibility. So we actually manage those funds on behalf of the business. And then we provide a comprehensive energy and carbon management service to help those organizations to identify projects they should invest in. What are the rebates that are available? What are the opportunities to drive those carbon savings? Energy, fuel, waste, water, renewable energy are all the types of projects that we look at as part of that program and part of that process. And I'm honestly most excited about that program. It has a tremendous potential to create some impacts. So finally, just wrapping it up, we are an aspiring, we are a software company, but we are aspiring to create a very robust software as a service platform that allows businesses and organizations to not only measure their sustainability performance, but also to take action and report on that performance. So the tools that we've created currently are the first step in that process. Right now, this is a tool that's designed for the tourism and hospitality sector. It's our online assessment, the one that I mentioned that has 87 questions and then really hundreds of different answer options. I would encourage, even if you're not in the tourism and hospitality sector, this might be an interesting tool to use. There might be some questions that are irrelevant until we get our new non-industry specific green business assessment online. But it's designed to allow users to go through, identify areas of opportunity, check off what they're doing, and then see where they have some room for improvement. And over time, online will allow for action planning as part of this. In the meantime, we have some free downloads available to help businesses and organizations to create their own action plans. So once you've gone through the assessment, we produce a sustainability score. It's unverified. It's not meant to be shared. We haven't, assessed or verified any of the answers. It's really meant to be an internal tool for organizations to use. The certification process is much more rigorous, where we're looking at evidence and diving in and asking questions. But at a high level, it produces a scorecard that lets the organization see how are we doing in all of these areas. This particular assessment covers all aspects of sustainability. It's quite holistic in the approach. So we've got management practices, which could, if you think about ESG, that's sort of the governance side, the management practices. Social and economic impacts would be the S. And then the natural and cultural and environmental, would be more of the E, and the cultural and social and economic more of the S. And we can also expand that. So it's really easy for an organization to see how they're improving in a number of different areas. We're also in the process of finalizing our online dashboard. We're using an Excel version of it right now, but this will enable the visualization and benchmarking of aggregate results by industry or geographic region. So for example, a tourism destination will be able to identify how their industry is performing on all of those indicators in order to help them pinpoint where the strengths and weaknesses are and where maybe investments can be made in programming or education to help those organizations improve their performance. So they'll be able to see things like the average scores, total number of participants who have been engaged or trained. And then with our green business certification program, will actually be able to quantify the percentage and total change in emissions based on some data we'll collect up front around building size, etc., business type, and then as organizations change the answers to their questions over time, we'll be able to quantify those impacts. So we're very, very excited about the new developments coming out next year. This is just an example of the dashboard that is in development right now. It is online. It's just not been released. So an example of how a higher level organization would be able to view the results of the businesses that have gone through the assessment and helping them to understand their stakeholders' performance in a number of different areas. And that's just the expanded dashboard example. So being able to drill down a little bit from some of those higher level categories into the question and answer level. And I think I'm just over my time. So I'm going to wrap it up and really looking forward to taking any questions.
Thank you, Angela. That was amazing. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or you could drop them in the chat and Angela can answer them. I have a first one to to get us right on the track. Now, you said that there was a problem with green hushing. So
Mm,
organizations that are working on doing sustainable solutions or embedding sustainability into their organization, but are um, either intimidated to kind of share their story or maybe unequipped to actually know how to do so responsibly. How does your organization, how does Greenstep support with the storytelling aspect of
mm.
people's sustainability journeys?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just if anyone's interested in that research, Xavier Font in the UK is the individual who coined the term green hushing, and he speaks about it primarily in the tourism sector, but I think it applies across sectors. So as far as the storytelling goes, there's two things that I would say are really important. One is transparency, and a lot of organizations, they'll do a few things and go out and say we're sustainable now, which I think the intention is not to lie or mislead, greenwash about their claims, but they don't necessarily understand the nuance in the language or what some of those words mean. And really, there are very few businesses who could make a claim that they're sustainable now or they're fully green. There are probably a few out there, but they're far and few between. So helping businesses to communicate where they're actually at, being transparent about that, and then identifying here's where we're at today, here's where we're going. So that's usually the first kind of report that we would produce, is that baseline measurement of results and the communication of the goals, the targets, and some of the short-term actions that organization is planning on taking. So that's kind of the commitment. We're going out with a bold statement to say, we know we're not perfect, here's where we're at, and here's where we're going. So that's first year story. Sometimes we'll also look at what are you already doing that's awesome, that we can talk about, that we can share, because every organization that I can think of has something good going on. And often organizations, when they go through our assessment, they go, oh, I didn't even think that was associated with sustainability. That's really cool. So we like to identify what are they already doing that they can share. Then for subsequent years, it's really about reporting out on that progress, and measuring and quantifying that impact year over year. So if it's a carbon footprint, if it's a verified sustainability score, if it's some internal action plan that they've been working on and they're able to say, yes, I did that. Yes, I did that. Here's how it impacted my carbon footprint. Here's how it impacted other things that we've been measuring. We help to help the organizations to tell that story in a credible way.
Beautiful response. Thank you. I appreciate that. If anybody else has any questions, now would be a great time. I'll give you a few seconds. You can feel free to
I
unmute yourself.
I think the I don't know if it's the millennials or Generation Z, they call it gatekeeping. Like
Right.
setting up this criteria somehow and saying, oh, you don't, I think businesses are reluctant to open themselves up in that way, right? Because but I what you say about employees is so important too. People do want to feel like they're working for a company that's making a difference, or that is at least working towards an improvement. I teach a lot of young people in environmental programs, and I can tell you, if it's a choice between a job versus a career where they can make a difference, they definitely want to feel like they're part of something. They're yeah. I see that over and over with young people. They really, really want that. And I think that a lot of employers just aren't listening.
That's a really
Yeah,
good
they're not.
comment, though, Rosalind. So, a question following that up is how, as an organization or a business, is the most meaningful, or maybe one option of a meaningful way to incorporate your employees into your sustainability actions?
Well, we actually just heard from a client. It was the Kootenay Rockies Tourism Association, actually, and they had, I believe, they had added some of their sustainability values to a job posting, and they had a lot of candidates apply, and every single candidate mentioned that aspect where they talked about their sustainability goals and vision as part of the job posting. So when people read that, they knew right away what that organization stood for and what they would be able to be a part of. So in a tough labor market, integrating it into your job descriptions is probably if you've got something credible to talk about, or you're getting started on your journey, talking about it in your job descriptions, and then the next step would be really integrating that within the organization through the creation of a green team, if that doesn't already exist, getting people working at that, and articulating what it means for the organization, setting those goals, creating the action plan, and moving that process forward.
Hello. Thank you, Angela, for wonderful presentation. I have one question related to what would you recommend? What would be the specific areas SMEs can make a significant impact that encourage sustainable behaviors? For example, if some organization that are starting at a small scale, then what would be the top 3 things that you would recommend them to integrate to build that foundation that would scale up on a bigger level?
Awesome. That's a great question. And I think there are measures that are sort of like changing light bulbs, for example, that are things that will differ depending on the business. But as far as setting the foundation, just building on what I just shared, the very first thing that we recommend and that we do when we're leading an organization through the development of a sustainability strategy is engaging the team, the entire team, about the fact that you're launching on this journey. You're working towards being more sustainable, reducing your carbon footprint. You're not sure where it's going to go. Maybe the senior leader has an idea. They can share that. Getting senior leadership involvement is critical in order to help ensure the success of the initiative. So that team engagement, ideally starting with the top, and then the next step is saying who would like to be a part of this, and letting people self-select to participate on a green team or a sustainability committee. Again, that senior leadership is really critical to having their participation on this team. And if the team lets their management know it's really important to them that they're part of it, a good manager should be encouraging and supportive of that. And if not, perhaps those team members will look elsewhere. And if so, that's really going to be important. So that education engagement, starting that green team, and then the first exercise that green team should undertake, and we've got lots of blog posts about this on our website, is setting those goals. Actually, let me backtrack. If you can, measuring your baseline performance in one or more areas. So that could be a carbon footprint measurement. Sometimes that can be a bit advanced for organizations, so that might be a more intimidating place to start, but lots of great organizations like Green Economy Canada and Greenstep and others out there can help you to get started on that path of measuring your carbon footprint. But if you can, measuring it in some way, maybe it's even just a survey about how employees feel engaged around sustainability, or maybe it's a waste audit, or maybe it's an energy assessment, or maybe you don't have the capacity to do baseline right away. You add those baseline measurements into your action plan if you don't have the capacity to do that assessment off the top. And then you're going to have a goal or a few goals. Sometimes there's environmental goals, social goals, economic goals, and set some measurable targets. How are you going to measure whether you're actually meaningfully working towards those goals? An example would be like a net zero target. We're going to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 50% by 2030. That's something you can actually track. Or we're going to reduce our energy consumption by 50% by 2027. Those are things you can track. So you want to have that quantification and time-bound element to those targets, and then figure out, okay, we've got our goals. Now that the fun part is really brainstorming all of the actions the organization could take in order to get there, and then prioritizing those actions. We're actually going through that very process at Greenstep right now with our green team, which is really cool. We've done a lot of work in teaching other people how to do this, and we've always had sort of a high level action plan, but we're actually putting it to work. So that'll take a few meetings to get through those processes. But establishing that regular meeting rhythm is really important too. So saying we're meeting monthly on this day and this time for now and forevermore, and getting that team together.
Thank you so much for answering. This gives like that bigger picture of assigning those targets and tasks to the sustainability goals that you are targeting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? I have one more just before you go. Now, a green team is pivotal in kind of creating a culture of sustainability within an organization. If an organization does not have a green team, what is an essential step or what is pivotal to create a good, well-functioning, meaningful green team for an organization?
So having willing participants. So again, give the first step we typically take is to allow people to self-select. So putting the word out to the organization that you're forming a green team and letting people who are really passionate be there. Having that senior leadership involved is 2, and then appointing someone who is going to be sort of the accountable person that's driving when the next meetings are happening, getting prepared for those meetings. So if you're creating some goals and an action plan, creating those tools and documents. So really a point person, you could call it a project manager or the chair or whomever. And if it's a bigger organization, maybe there are a few other responsibilities that are delegated, and accountability. So if people walk away and leave that meeting saying, yes, we're going to do that, you're checking in on that in the next meeting. You're keeping minutes and you're keeping track and making sure that you're making progress month over month and year over year.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Again, everybody, Angela Nagy from Greenstep. If you would like to get in contact with her, you can email Angela at greenstep.ca, or you could always contact the Atlantic Canada Climate Network and we will connect you as well. Angela, thank you again for your time today. We definitely walked away a little more informed than when we started. And for all of you who have more pressing questions on carbon measurements and how to create a sustainable business and practices, please feel free to reach out. With that, thank you again for everybody attending, and we look forward to see you in the future at our Innovation Speaker Series. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you, Angela.